Welcome to pop.0 with Brian Chaffin and John Keith.
Today is Wednesday, October 25th, 2017, and somehow or another, this is a podcast actually a video podcast for the Mac Observer. I'm Brian Chaffin, editor-in-chief of TMO.
And, some of the readers and listeners and watchers would call you a liar, as they did in a post. It's not a podcast till it's syndicated as a podcast. When is a podcast really a podcast?
That is a good question.
And with that metaphysical query, I'm John Keith. Howdy, Brian. How are you doing?
Howdy, partner. I am good. It's been a busy week.
You turned robotic there for a second. Hopefully the internet will steady itself out there. So, Brian, as always, we have 3 topics and we're lying. Today's topics are, number 1, time travel. Number 2, what we already discussed, who we thought were likely and or good CEOs to take over from Tim Cook at Apple.
Yep.
Who are bad CEOs to take over Apple from within is probably more relevant, or even maybe from without or outside the company. So worst Apple CEO successors. And topic number 3 is kind of our annual iPhone production number misinformation, sky is falling news cycle that seems to go on every year. So let's jump in it. The time travel was your choice today, and I love time travel stuff. So what you got on your mind about traveling through them times?
Well, so the thing I've had on my mind for a very long time are time travel movies and books that get it wrong. And this is a huge pet peeve of me. On the good side, on the doing it right side, we've got The Dragon Riders of Pern. Did you ever read those?
No, I'm unfamiliar. Recommend it. I got to get a whole bunch of Audible books.
Fantasy books. They were written in the 70s by Anne McCaffrey, very talented writer. She actually calls them sci-fi, which makes sense because it's actually set in the future, not the past. It's just the world that the story is initially set in is very has regressed back to a medieval level of technology and culture.
That's interesting. A couple of other sci-fi books I have that element. One, a little bit touches on it, is The Metamorphosis of Prime Intellect, which you can get for free, but it's an excellent, if not unbelievably intense and at times highly inappropriate sci-fi version dealing with the singularity, but there's a regression part to it. And then there's the trilogy. I forget the name of the author. He does the trilogy's name is The Void, but he has this kind of advanced yet regressed mysticism that almost kind of ties in with I guess leprechauns and stuff.
Did you ever read Dune?
Doom?
Yeah, Dune. D-U-N-E.
Oh,
Frank Herbert.
Yeah, I did. I went. I did. I'm not as big on. I'm not high on that. I was when I was.
I am a huge Dune fan, but I think he did a fantastic job of mixing future technology with regressive culture.
Yeah, like the still, is it still or sill suits? I forget, where you piss yourself and then drink it. And
yeah, those are called still suits.
Yeah, still suits, I think. Yeah, he did. There was a lot of good stuff in there. Just I won't bore you, but yeah, it's one of those stories that was good for its time and has soured for me over time.
I have to. We're so off on a tangent right from the start, but to me, Dune is one of the very few science fiction books from the 60s that holds up to a modern reading.
Oh,
most science fiction from the 60s is just crap.
Well, wasn't 2001 from the 60s, or did it come out earlier and was adapted?
Read 2000. Well, listen, Arthur C. Clarke has more talent in like the tip of his finger than I've got in my entire body. He's amazing. Some of there was an aspect of writing that science fiction was very new at, and there are some amazing stories from the 60s. And I mean, look at Philip K. Dick, some amazing stories. The guy couldn't write his way out of a wet paper bag. Just terrible writing. And Heinlein, some of Heinlein's early stuff, I think is very, very difficult to read with a modern eye. But Dune, to me, holds up to a modern reading.
It's an interesting observation you made, and it's very well articulated. Being a good storyteller and being a good writer are two different talents that often may be coincident, but not necessarily. I've heard some people that like, when you think about it, the story was great, but the writing is tough to get.
Yeah.
And so
people who write well who couldn't tell a story to save their life. So
exactly.
And I mean, the thing about sci-fi is that the people that were writing that stuff weren't coming at it from a literary standpoint. They were coming at it from a creative standpoint, from an imagination standpoint. And there was just a certain level. Same thing with fantasy at the time. Just there's a lot of material from that day, even if it was a good story, even if it was great in its time. And I'm a huge believer in judging from a creative standpoint and from a content standpoint. You have to judge at least partially the context of the times. For Star Trek, the original series, is terrible from a cinematographic standpoint, but I mean, it's just
great,
amazing TV show. Yeah, amazing TV show. I love it.
The original Twilight Zone, that kind of advantage their shit. And you go even further back from a literary advantage, Tom Sawyer, Huck Finn, great for the time. If you did them now, I don't know how you'd have to do them now. It'd be messed up on a whole number of levels potentially. Okay,
but at the same time, there's a lot of stuff that Twain did that we're still emulating today. Twain was a genius.
Sure, absolutely. I mean, we're in full agreement. I mean, my favorite, of course, is his last work, and it's brilliant. Anyway, we've gone down a deep rabbit hole.
Dragon Riders of Pern. Right. That's a story. That's a story that does time travel correctly. In my ever so humble opinion.
What made it proper versus what makes stuff improper in your view?
Oh, okay. And so cutting to something more recent, Dark Matter had in season 3. There's an episode where they come back to. By the way, a brief rant.
Spoilers for.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, spoilers. Although it is season 3 and it's been out for months and months and months. But there's one episode where they come back into the 2016, 2017. They're a little bit vague about it, and they also do time travel properly. Here's the thing. So you've got time, right?
Line that you just drew. Yes,
I'm drawing a line, and here is the past. Here's the future. Excuse me. Here's the present. Here's the future.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What's happened in the past has already happened. Mm-hmm. So if someone goes back to the past from the future, it's already happened. Their arrival in the past has already happened, even though they haven't left yet.
You're losing me. If someone goes back, so past, present, future. If someone goes back to the past, it's already happened.
Their arrival in the past has already happened.
But isn't there a first instance, like meaning it's there's this concept of time being a river, like there's an initial part of the flow that starts kind of the loop or whatever, eddies and whatnot.
Well, so there are math people that can probably rake me over the coals for everything that I think of as being proper time travel from the storytelling perspective, and there's also the multi-universe theory, and there's a bunch of different factors that can come into play.
Right, where any time travel to the past fractures into a multiverse.
But for our universe, it's already happened.
It's already happened.
It's already happened. If tomorrow I go back to 2010 and do something, well, it already happened in 2010.
Huh.
You're not changing time. You're already part of the continuum.
But if today, let's say today, whatever, George, well, let's try not to be too political. Today, I'm alive, right? But now you go back in time and you kill me. So the 2000
didn't happen. No one has ever done it. No one will do it because you're here today.
So what does that mean when you go back in time? Like the point is that if one were to go back in time, which of course is I don't think there's any science that truly says you can truly go back in time. There is
outside of tachyons.
My understanding is that inside of a black hole that there are enough forces that it's possible to actually go back in time.
But you would be spaghettified.
What?
You'd be spaghettified entering the black hole.
Oh, you mean like an actual practical version? I have a theory on that I will share later. But anyway, go ahead. Yep.
Any attempt to rewrite the past has already been rewritten, and the parties involved that are trying to rewrite the past essentially actually help write what we know of. That's the thing. Now, of course, one could argue, does that mean that predestination is a thing? Is all of time already set in stone? And that is a fantastic question.
Yeah, I have to say that a lot of what you're saying already has broken my head, which is not a far fall for me. But I always view it like, there's a certain amount of relativism, which I'm not sure actually survives time travel. But relative from my point of view, everything is mutable, everything is changeable. So if today in 2017 this happy face exists and I go back in time and kill it before the production, I knew of such a device that was made, but I had changed it when I go in the past. But the past is future for me, meaning if I have a watch on, right, and the watch keeps ticking away and I travel back in the past, my watch keeps advancing relative to me. This is a progression of time for me. So in some sense, if I'm understanding you right, by the time I get back to 2017, say I go 10 years back in the past, I'm now 10 years older, right? This ball, lack of creation, it really almost forces kind of that splintered universe because.
But the reality is that whatever it is that you did to try to destroy that ball actually played a role in you having the ball. That's how it ended up working out.
Why? Why would that necessarily be true?
Because it's already happened and you have the ball. It's already happened and you have the ball. Therefore, whatever it is that you did to try to destroy the ball really just ended up in resulting in you having the ball to begin with.
Yeah, I guess I don't follow it. This is one of the places where.
All right, so here's an example. We'll look at the Dragon Riders of Pern first. They find out that the dragon. Spoilers, by the way. This is a 35-year-old set of books, but spoilers. They find out that they're dragons who they've known could actually blink from point A to point B in physical space. Point A to point B in physical space. By an accident, they find out that dragons can actually also go to different points in time. If they have the right information, about where the stars are, and et cetera. And so when they're finding this out, I think this is in book 2, but they're finding this out, and they need to be able to somehow create a new generation of dragons much faster than that it would normally happen. So they decide to go back in time on another continent and raise dragons back in time so that they will be ready to go now when they need them. And when they go looking at this continent, they find traces of evidence that humans are there. It's supposed to be a continent that has not been inhabited on this planet. And they find traces of humanity and whatnot. Well, it comes to find out that what they were finding, even though they didn't even know about this place yet, and they didn't even know that they could do time travel, that the traces of humanity were actually their traces from when they ended up going back in the past.
Which didn't happen till their future at some point.
Correct.
Yeah,
So
I guess that's kind of a written out. Yeah, I see that thing. So at that point, you're just the cog playing with no free will, right? You're rolling down a hill. Even every choice you make, you think does that, but it's in some sense it's predestined to happen because it's already happened.
Yeah. Well, alternately speaking, you still have free will, but the decisions you make have already played out.
They've already been written out. All your permutations and decisions, which you may have not experienced as you having made the decision, even though they are your free will, still have played out in kind of the annals.
And what we look at is our past. Looking at dark matter.
By the way, just while I remember, there is a third kind of. So we talked about the two kind of the time travel multiverse versus kind of this like predestined flow. Simulation of universes allow easy time travel.
It's true.
Right? If you're living in a synthetic universe, going anywhere, anyhow, it's super easy. And there's a bunch of books that use that construct too. Actually, I think it was the Void trilogy might have had a bit of that too. It was very interesting. Anyway,
I do that in my own science fiction novel that I'm shopping even as we speak.
Anyway,
okay, so looking at dark matter, we have another example. So they end up through a technological glitch they weren't expecting. Actually, I think the guy called him back, but whatever. They find themselves 600 years in their past, which just happens to be our present. Right. And they're all worried about like polluting the timeline and causing paradoxes and essentially winking themselves out of existence. And then what they end up finding out is that one of the people from our time that they end up interacting with, that person's great granddaughter was inspired to invent faster than light drives because of all the stories that her grandfather, i.e. the child, the kid that they meet during the show, all the stories that he would talk about the possibilities of travel through time and through space. So they didn't pollute the timeline. They were already part of the timeline.
Right. So
they do it right.
I think I get your personal preference. So I kind of, now that I think about more, we probably discussed 3, maybe 4 different types of time travel. So there's one that I mentioned that you're not a fan of. It's kind of the relativistic wake of your individuality, meaning to you, time keeps going forward. So when you go back, you actually affect things, and perhaps it makes a split tangent universe. Perhaps you've just modified the flow and relive it, but it's kind of this wake version of it. The second is the multiverse. The third is yours, which is kind of somewhat paradoxical because you still have free will throughout it, but since it's already played out through the annals of time, another view of it is you're just rolling along that path of existence. And the fourth is simulation, where like anything goes.
Version 3 and version 2 are not incompatible.
Okay.
Right? Because my timeline could be well split off from some decision-making point.
Sure.
But it's still my timeline. I only know one timeline. At any given moment, like, the infinite number of me's and you's discussing this all have our own timelines.
Sure.
Okay. And there's an infinite number of worlds where you and I don't even exist, etc.
It's interesting that I've never, sat and thought about it, but yeah, there's like 4 different models that we've fleshed out here. There may be.
Okay, then you've got Back to the Future, where dude goes back in time and he changes time, but it somehow doesn't affect the future. And you got a photograph, and the photograph like slowly fades out. That drives me fucking nuts. That is so fucking intellectually lazy bullshit storytelling, man. Fucking bullshit. Great movies, sloppy as crap, intellectually speaking. That really drives me nuts.
You know what's interesting is the kind of pet peeves that bug everyone. I think everyone, when they have a vocation and it's being demonstrated or portrayed on television, sees these things that nobody else sees. Like if you're into tech at all, of course, every hacker, hacks the rock music, and you could tell they're really intensely hacking when they're just like bashing the keyboard and 3D shit's flying. And just horse shit like that, and you're like,
yeah.
Yeah, fucking break, right? To everyone else's, they're like, just chill out. We get it. Like, I don't care, how you actually hacked it. But when it's your vocation, you kind of feel differently about it. The other thing, one of my other pet.
What, because I'm a writer?
No,
this thing with Back to the Future drove me nuts a long time before I ever started writing a novel.
Well, no, it's just your pet peeve. My other pet peeve is every cop show, like the cops just got their brand new wardrobe, like a sharp shirt, like from the store, which by the way is way too expensive for anyone in that vocation. It's because they all just got out of wardrobe, and wardrobe forgot, like, not everyone wears new clothes every damn day, right? So
how about a period movie where every single car from 1938 is showroom quality?
Right.
That like, there's no jalopies, there's no rusted wrecks, there's no cars that are limping along, there's nothing from 1920 driving around in 1938, when there would have been a lot of Model Ts driving around in 1938.
So,
right, you never see Model Ts in a 1938 movie.
Right.
In a movie set in 1938. I mean.
But everyone has these kind of pet peeves about these portrayals, often coincident with what their kind of field of knowledge is.
Yeah, of course.
And so, my girlfriend, she sometimes looks at me ranting like the lunatic I am, and it's like, what's the problem here? But she's in the medical field, and so she sees someone drawing blood, and she's like, who does that? Nobody. She's like, no, you'd be sued. I mean, she's like, you'd hurt the person. No one does stuff like that. And I'm like, see what we're dealing with? And all the movies are like this.
Yeah.
But also I feel sorry for kind of the storytellers, because no one's an expert in a lot of these fields, and I don't know anything about the writers of Back to the Future and whatnot. They had their constraints at all, but this stuff is pretty complex, and it kind of ties in with an article that came out, a new theory about how wormholes can exist. And the classic thoughts on wormholes were really complicated, but they were tough to manifest because they take huge amounts of energy, and they want to collapse on themselves based on kind of older theories really quick without some kind of weird exotic matter holding them open. And there's a new theory that came out, and I'll post a link on the show, where you don't need exotic matter, and what you need are two black holes. And the black holes, when they're close enough, they may have an entanglement of between them. And this entanglement allows for wormholes to exist, and it solves a couple of problems. There's this problem, I think it's called the unity theory, where the information can't be lost, kind of like energy is always transformed, but information can't be lost in the universe. And Stephen Hawking's had this observation that black holes kind of fizz radiation away, and eventually they fizz out to nothing. But there was no way, using kind of going back in time, which is a model they used to see information loss, to refigure out what that matter came from. And it was this contradiction in kind of the unity theory and with the observations, and they couldn't reconcile it. And they recently reconciled it with this entanglement idea, where what happens is that this fizzing of matter away from a black hole is really matter that's entering another black hole that's entangled and coming out the other end, which allows for information to flow through wormholes for reals. Well, the theory suggests it, without like weird energy and stuff like that. My point is this just came out this week, right? And it's a theory, but this stuff is hard. So the book on how this stuff works is far from written and complete. So you have a little bit of sympathy for writers that are trying to wrap their heads around these really complicated things that at a certain point, as far as their technical... Listen. I wash my hands of this, and people fade in and out, and fuck that.
Yeah. I get that we can't be experts in everything. However, we can find people who are. And for instance, I won't name the book. I've been trying very, very hard not to speak ill of any other writers since I decided to become a writer of fiction myself. But when you don't load a bow, you knock an arrow. But when you're holding a bow on someone drawn, you can't then take something from them. I'm just saying you can't do that. And I'm talking about a very popular book. And the thing is that she made $1 jillion on this. She can find someone who knows archery. If your main character is going to be an archer, go study archery. Go read a book on archery. Go talk to some archers, or just have an archer read your book. That's all I'm saying. Don't get me wrong. We're all going to make mistakes. We can't be an expert in everything. But if you're gonna write a movie with a central conceit or aspect that is absolutely a main part of the plot, figure it out and then write about it. That's all I'm saying.
So I'm guessing you didn't agree with the science and weird science.
The science. No, that's just that's just. I mean, that's fun.
Yeah, I understand.
Comic is and the Back to the Future movies are terrific movies. They're funny. Michael J. Fox is just brilliant in them, and so was Lloyd Christopher. He's like, the movies are great. It's just the science is lazy.
It didn't have to be that bad off. I get it. I totally get it. Anyway, so I was going to give you, this is a personal theory that I shared on our tech group months and months before this latest theory came out. But here's how you can actually time travel. So there's this theory that what happens inside of a black hole, inside the event horizon, deep within the black hole, near the singularity, where shit is fucked up so intensely it's hard for our minds to conceive it. But apparently right around the singularity, even inside a black hole, there's this swirled, really raped version of space-time. It's just so swirling. And what happens is it's swirling so tight around the singularity that to move from one part of it to another is literally a jump in time. Is the not accurate but rough way of saying how it's easy to move through time there, potentially. A lot of this is theoretical. The problem is, you and I will not survive a trip near the event horizon, or beyond the event horizon. So how do you get to that intensity? The way you get to that intensity, this is my personal theory, is maybe I didn't know this, but apparently binary star systems are way more common than even singular star systems.
Yes,
are the most common thing. And there are many supermassive stars that are binary as well. So if you have some couple of supermassive stars that collapse and become binary black holes, which again is surprisingly not uncommon. It's a decently common occurrence. What happens is there's a moment between the two where the forces basically equal out, where you don't necessarily get ripped apart, right? Somewhere it's kind of like the eye of the hurricane. The forces equal out within the between the two, where you don't necessarily die if you can calculate that path between the two of them. However, space is warped like fucking crazy between the two. It's stretched to hell. So navigating between those two, you're going to have some crazy warps in space-time. Not necessarily getting you back in time, but potentially either slowing it to crazy amounts or accelerating it to crazy amounts. That just finding the right path of density where you're not ripped apart through that tidally stretched part of space gets you to these potential time travels.
The challenge there being, of course, that you can't actually know exactly where the black hole is at any given moment.
Oh,
either of them.
Well, my understanding is you can. There's I forget the name of this new satellite that they put out to observe black holes, and they observe it kind of with two mechanisms. One, they just see shit. A massive star going really fast around something is kind of indicative of a black hole, right? So you kind of can pinpoint it from that. And then there's emissions from black holes. I think it's gamma ray emissions that come out the top as it's feeding on mass and belching shit out is another way to measure it. And there's probably more that I'm totally unaware of, but at least those two mechanisms, where you can find black holes, and there's, like I said, I forget the name of it, but there's a specialized satellite out that was either just launched or soon to be launched that does this kind of detection for, you know, research kind of shit. So and they're getting to the point where they can even think that they model the surface, and it looks kind of like a warpage and a fisheye warpage wherever you are. So if you see a star field and all of a sudden there's this bug-eye fisheye warp where the stars are warped around you, that's also like a third God,
there's a difference between knowing that it's there and knowing precisely where it is so that you can navigate between it. I mean, mind you, if we even be able to fly any kind of spaceship at that point, we probably have super advanced technology that we can't understand today. So
I'm not saying we're going to get in my Chevy and go there today. You know, it's obviously a future thing. The point is it something that is conceivably doable with enough advanced tech that you could get these things as you get close to them, and then some kind of crazy calculation, because, you know, if you're off by I don't know, like how razor thin that path is between the two of them. Not to mention these things may be rotating around each other at a decently fast clip. So you kind of have to, you know, find that moment as everything is moving. But let's just presume, from kind of a sci-fi thing, that you can. All of a sudden, as they're moving, they're twisting space-time. They're doing essentially something similar that's going on inside the black hole. It's a taffy maker of space-time as it's doing that. So as you navigate that, you can edge a little bit more, a little bit in, and jump time. That's my personal theory. There you go. And interestingly, this new theory, and they had a new math formula in this. The new math formula was really kind of interesting. Well, if you're a physics wonking geek, the new math formula is ER equals EPR, where ER is the Einstein-Rosen bridge, kind of quantum wormholes, is equated to the Einstein-Podolsky-Rosen pairs of particles. So what it basically says is that crap that comes into a black hole gets like octopused out as particles out through another black hole connected through these wormholes. So ER equals EPR is their proposed new theory on this. But I predated it, and there's proof on our tech group. So there you are. But anyway, my point is this shit is complex. Nobody knows anything yet, and but it's so fascinating, you know, on how it worked out. But my point is, I've proposed to you a, as of yet not debunked fake news, potential for time travel.
All right, fair enough. Yes.
Yes, exactly. All right, that was fun. I love shit.
Yeah, that's good. That's good stuff.
That's a really great topic for like Mystery Theater 3000 kind of shit, like the slam.
So let me ask you a question. How far into Dune did you read? How many books did you read?
I think I just read the initial one, and that was it.
Okay, well, to be fair, the initial one is definitely is the least well written of the three. It was pretty early in his career, and it was like 1962, man.
Well, to be fair,
look at all the other science fiction that was coming out in 1962. It's head and shoulders above it. But the books he was writing on them until his death. There are actually 6 books in the series. Unfortunately, he didn't finish it, and I'm ignoring all the prequels written by his. I'm not a fan very much of the prequels that are written by his son and another very talented writer. But the 6 books that Frank Herbert wrote are fantastic, and they just keep getting better.
Did you know, by the way, that Rembrandt's brother was Bugatti?
Really?
Yeah, and he was a failed artist. Like, the dad wanted him to become an artist, and Rembrandt ended up being the more talented, and so Rembrandt got all this attention. And he felt like a failure because he wanted to be an artist, and he was a great artist. I mean, his cars are basically moving art. Sure. And anyway, he, you know, obviously was a pretty good success in his own right. And Bugatti died in, I think it was like the late 50s, early 60s. Didn't really survive the war, and the son that was taking over, that was a very talented artist and designer in his own right, died in a car crash. And there was one other son, but Bugatti himself his heart wasn't in it anymore, and that one other son tried to restart it, I think in the 60s, with a kind of an interesting car, but didn't quite capture it. But it reminded me of what you're saying is, some of these things don't transfer through the generations, right?
Yep. It's very, very, very true. It's very, very true. I did not know that they were related. And imagine, by the way, imagine like your father, he doesn't want you to be an engineer. He wants you to be an artist.
Yeah. And Bugatti for his whole life has said, yeah, engineers are kind of cool, but artists are really where it is at. And I believe Rembrandt designed one of the little like head gasket pieces for one of Bugattis as well. Yeah.
One of the radiator caps.
Yep.
Wow.
One of there's like a 1 in 6 car, I forget. It's this really long ass, amazingly beautiful car from the 30s.
Sure. Yeah, those are gorgeous cars.
Anyway, cool, very cool stuff. So let's. I think we beat that one decently well. So let's go to topic number 2. Your thoughts on who the worst CEO successors of Tim Cook would be at Apple if it had to happen now or soon. Let's start with from within Apple. And to recap, I think both of us discussed who we thought were the most likely and decent choices from within Apple. And
a few episodes ago, right?
Yeah, and it was my choice was Fed Cratericki was probably first from within. From without Apple, it was Crazy Eye Scott Forstall. And the Apple Watch dude guy is probably the more likely guy, I thought. And he's fine. He's a fine fellow, but he's not as exciting to me as Craig. I forget that guy's name.
Right, Jeff Williams?
Yes, Jeff Williams. Thank you.
He's currently the COO.
Right.
Which is what Tim Cook was.
And if maybe I'm misremembering, but I thought that you were kind of similar mind, that you thought that Jeff was probably the more reasonable pick of among the stew of candidates there.
Yeah. Yes, he is. I don't think though there's anyone obvious. But then I also didn't think Tim Cook was obvious. I thought that Tim Cook ran directly contrary to Steve Jobs' own comments about putting a product guy a product person in charge of a product company.
Oh, you mean a non-product person in charge of a product company?
Yes. Well, Steve specifically said you need to have a product person in charge of a product company.
And he particularly pointed out the people that you should not have in charge of
bean counters and salesmen. And bean counters too. He bagged on, because I think he bagged on he used HP once. And HP at that time was being led by
his example during the one interview was Xerox, though. He's like, look, you already own a monopoly, so who cares if your new Xerox copier is better, because you're still going to sell a shitload of them. So now all you're really doing, the salespeople drive the product features, not like the innovators.
And he also used Steve Ballmer at Microsoft.
Was a sales dude. He wasn't marketing.
Yeah, but the HP bean counter was put in charge of HP.
Okay.
And ran it into the ground. Yep. But anyway, I may be misremembering, but I thought his two examples were salesmen and bean counters both. He never bagged on logistics people, and we could probably guess why, because he was definitely grooming Tim Cook for leadership the whole time. And we have no evidence that Tim is grooming anyone for leadership.
So, well, yeah, there's an article that came out that, and this article rehashes a rumor that's old, which was that Angela Ardens was brought on. She was given an outrageous like $75 million in stock to take away from Burberry, and that there was a silent promise from Tim that not only are you going to get this role, but you're being groomed as the heir apparent of taking over Apple. So that article, there was an article that came out about that, and then a couple other articles that said, here are the other possibilities. And all the possibilities that were listed in this other article were basically salespeople or non-technical people.
I don't think I think that Angela Rentz was brought in to remold and reshape and reinvent Apple retail. So,
well, let's try not to dodge the question. Who do you think would be the worst person from Apple, kind of amongst its executives? Because I'm sure there's people that you could find in the corners that will have a red stapler and will be bad. But amongst the kind of the big VPs,
I
choice to take over.
I once thought that I wrote a piece arguing that Johnny Ive was being groomed for the and I said if he doesn't if he doesn't appear on stage at the next Macworld event, that'll be the proof in the pudding that I'm wrong. He did not appear on stage at that or any other Macworld or any kind of keynote. I was wrong about that. That certainly wasn't happening. But the more I put thought into that, I think he might be the worst person to put in charge, not because he's a bad guy, but because he doesn't like to say no, and he doesn't like to I think he's friction averse.
Yeah, and you know what else is interesting? I wonder. I don't know that he's the worst. I'm sure you don't have to guess far to imagine who I think is the worst. But a designer does not make a good CEO necessarily. And Woz, might chime in as well. He was a great designer. I mean, an amazing designer of the Apple II. But he himself says, I'm just not a business guy. I wasn't cut out for this. I didn't, see the need to have a business. Steve did. So I think he's a design guy. That's what he likes to do. I'm not sure he's cut out for a CEO thing. And I think
he's not.
Wouldn't be great at it.
No, not at all. Now, I also reject the premise that he was bumped up to the C-suite so that he could be ushered out. That's nonsense. I've never liked that line of reasoning. Never liked that line of reasoning, even a little bit.
Yeah, you're right. There was a bunch of rumors about that. I didn't buy it. I mean, there may have been some PR aspect to it, just to kind of quell, this vacuum of vision kind of thing. And I'm not sure.
You don't bump someone up to fire them, or to even to let them go, even because they want to go. You don't bump them up to let them go.
Yeah, I agree with you. I didn't see that as making a whole lot of sense. I think he's earned his position. That guy is, he's put a lot of weight behind.
So I'm a huge fan of Angela Ahrendts, and I think that what she's doing with Apple Retail is extremely important. I know that you disagree, and we see her very differently. I'm a huge fan of hers. I don't think she would be a good CEO for Apple because she's not a product person.
She's a salesperson of the highest order,
and a very good one. And I think she's doing some good stuff in retail. Again, I know that you disagree with that, but she's not. I don't think she would be a good fit for Apple because she's not a product person. And I think that the person that takes over for Tim, so like Tim's job in replacing Steve Jobs was partly to make sure that Apple survived Steve Jobs, right? Survive Steve Jobs' passing. That was a big part of his role. And he, I think, has done an admirable job of that. Whether we both have nitpicks about some stuff, some of his shortcomings, but I think that the person that replaces him needs to be another product person, someone with vision.
I would hope so, or at the very least, someone that helps foster vision and loves products. The Tim just doesn't strike me as that kind of guy, and I agree with you. I think that's actually really interesting insight, that it's not for his product visions. It's so traumatic. You need someone with a steady hand to make this go. But you look at what happened.
Not just a steady hand, the ability to see how to guide the company and reshape the company to be a different company because it doesn't have a founder anymore. Not just a steady hand. I think we need to give Tim Cook a lot of credit for that.
On that point, I don't think he's done that at all. I think there's been a failure of vision, a failure of execution.
Different kind of vision.
What he has succeeded in is there was people are quick to dismiss this, and I give him a huge amount of credit for this. It could have tanked in the most profound and deep of ways. So
yeah.
Not being a wreck is an achievement, and I think that's where I do see the steady hand of maybe he's not hitting on all cylinders, maybe he has a lot of gaps, but he kept it steady. So now people can be thoughtful about what do we want to be now. Like, we didn't die, we've got everything going decently well. What is there to do? And you look at Microsoft, the Ballmer years, in my opinion, are dark ages for that company. But
even though they were the most profitable.
Yeah, but the same thing with Scully, right? I mean, they were more profitable than under Jobs before he was kicked out, but it's still dark years with crappy products, no vision, just shit. Apple's definitely gone down in design and execution and quality, but not as profoundly as during those other two eras from Microsoft and Apple's earlier era. So in that regard, I give Tim a lot of credit, and I could see why he might have been picked. I agree with you. A product person or a person that is a big cheerleader for products and understands them enough to be a good enough cheerleader to steal people's visions, right, and recast them as their own to some degree is important. And I think that's what the current CEO at Microsoft is. I don't think they've had someone that good since basically Bill Gates. Whether or not you agree Bill Gates was good or not, he certainly had his city vision, but he had one. So I we agree to some extent on Tim Cook. I think he's been on other places. He's skated by and deserves more scorn. It just like I don't see how you give credit to Angela for planting a couple of fucking trees and taking the word store out of a store.
So, I saw something today that speaks directly to this that I want to run past you.
Look it up. I guess that's what you give her credit for.
I saw something today that speaks directly to this, and I didn't actually read the piece. I only saw the description. That Tim and the know that malls are dying, and that the thing that they have and that they wanted to rebuild the Apple Store and the Apple Store experience to be able to survive that titanic shift in retail, and that's what she was brought in to do. And I think she's doing that.
Yeah, I question the value of these stores moving forward too. But maybe like I said, you've inherited a pretty amazing and successful product line. So my amount of credit that I give for that is de minimis. And one of the big draws for the Apple stores is definitely maintenance, right, and problem solving and stuff like that. And whether or not malls are popular or not, having an outlet like that is valuable to a tech company. So that they planted more trees. Somehow she gets credit for these community shit things that have been around like from day one at the Soho store.
And she's completely redoing them, dude. You're just such a jerk sometimes, man. I love you so much, but
she gets a lot of credit for shit that's already existed. That shit existed. You could be whiny about it all you want, but that's the fact. It existed.
Who's the one who's being whiny about it? That'd be you. You're the one who's being whiny about it.
That's a good point. That point is good. Other points are not.
So I have another hypothetical question for you. Look ahead 10 years from now.
Right.
If my thesis is right about Tim Cook, Apple has essentially disrupted the healthcare industry from a standpoint of information management and storage and management. And in so doing, has just grown to ever larger sizes. They've got their non-invasive glucose monitoring device that's out, and it's made Apple Watch a very big deal. It's changed the lives of potentially millions of people, possibly hundreds of millions of people, and that I think that we could all stand to monitor our glucose levels, even if diabetic or not. But ignore that. So it just it's changed the lives of diabetics and athletes. Apple has launched a self-driving, or is about to launch a self-driving autonomous vehicle ride-sharing platform. And Macs are still plugging along because they still need Macs to design all these other things on. iPhone has been changing and evolving and adapting. 10 years from now, it may not quite resemble what we think of as an iPhone today, but Apple has grown to several orders of its current size. Video is huge. Music is big. And Apple is doing all these things that it doesn't do today if that actually were to take place, would you reassess your opinion of Tim Cook?
No. I will. I've always given Tim Cook, and I think you'll back me up on this, and I've always been a defender of the Apple Watch in that it's a success by any rational rational standards, right? I mean, it sells crazy. It's huge margins. It clobbered the field that existed like within months. I personally find it of super limited use, but that may change with time. And the use I've always espoused is kind of health tracking. And to your point, not just the glucose thing, the heart monitoring things that you may find kind of bad arrhythmias, and who knows what else in the future as they put in more sensors on this.
Right.
The health monitoring aspects of this could be very transformative, and it's really the only reason I wear this thing, because I think there will be some use to that in the future. So I've always given him credit for that. That was a really successful. I think it's a legitimate. Remember, we have kind of an ongoing revolutions article of all the revolutions Apple's done over time, and I gave him that one as a major one, kind of like the iPod and the iPhone, and the watch is that, despite it having ridiculously limited use now. To your point, 10 years from now, if you look at the advance from the original iPhone to the 10-year one. I mean, it's incredible, the power difference, right? It's incredible how much more they do. 10 years from now, this may be powerful enough that you don't need a phone at all. You just don't need it because it'll have a Siri assistant.
It's possible.
Everywhere you go, your car will have a screen that this could project to, your laptop. It'll be able to engage in a bunch of different ways, and all your personal stuff just can be all in one place. And maybe phones start slowly going away by then. And so in that, I give him credit.
Phil has told us that they expect the iPhone to be relevant for 50 years, and I think that was a very calculated statement. I don't think it was off the cuff or anything like that. And I put merit into whatever they're thinking.
Maybe. I don't know that I think it's relevant in 50 years. I could see, I mean, there's early discussion even now that some people may be able to get rid of their phones. It's a very fringe edge case for sure, and use just the watch. But 10 years from now, I could see a decent sized dent in that. And these types of things tend to kind of build kind of evenly, and then bam, die, or with the iPod kind of go down, and then at some point the iPhone, the iPhone take up is so high that the iPod just dies. So there could be another curve like that happening too. I don't think 50 years is when it's going to happen. I think if it's going to happen, it will happen far sooner than 50 years, easily within 20 years, possibly 10, 15 years, with the pace of kind of advancement.
Get back to my question though. If so, Apple now is doing 10 years from now. So Apple is doing 5 times the revenue, and has these massive other product lines. The car thing is huge, transformative.
Maybe it's not fair, but I think you're similarly on this point. Revenue for me is never the measure, and I don't think at least by the PR.
Okay, no, that's actually a very fair point. I think that's actually a great point. So I'm thinking more in terms of like, we do finally have these other platforms that I believe that Tim Cook is focused on. That Macs and iPhones and iPads have suffered a little bit because he's got this. I think he's got his eye on these transformative things that are going to be huge. If that thesis is correct, in 10 years we should be seeing some of that. Maybe sooner on the medical side, maybe longer on the car. I don't know. But if they do under Tim Cook's watch, or even if he's replaced, but someone does what Tim Cook was working on, and they've become this major transformative player in just healthcare. Let's just look at just healthcare or just the car. Would you still not give him any credit as having vision?
The answer is it depends. And to cut to, I think, the spirit of what you're asking for, the short answer is yes. Success and achievement to me always trump any theories and all this it's all noise. if at the end you achieved and you did, look at
Sure.
the dark points of Steve Jobs' era, but in the end of it, despite his darkest days, with near bankruptcy of Pixar, near bankruptcy of Apple, being kicked out, at the end he achieved like few others have, and that's what it is. So Tim Cook may have had some dark days. Look, for a guy that's in charge of fucking operations to not produce Macs for 3-4 years at a time it's outrageously incompetent. Outrageously.
Okay. So let me give you one more subtle. Go ahead.
But all these ills could be cured with just success. If tomorrow he comes out with Siri that is like a real artificial intelligence thing that actually works, or he makes everyone healthier by 3 orders of magnitude or whatever, it cures any of those. Those other problems become quibbles because the success is so much more grand, right, on the other side. So yeah, in my opinion, that cures all ills. If he does that,
okay. Yeah, I see what you're saying. Yeah, fair enough. I think that Tim doesn't care that much about Macs and iPads and iPhones, and that what he really, really cares about is this other bigger stuff. And I think I think that the friction points you have with him, as a fan of Apple and as an observer of the company, are that he's not focused on the things that you were most interested in today.
We have a great analog to this. You know what the great analog to this is? General Electric.
I think about them all the time when it comes to
General
Apple.
Electric started as a really great core engineering company, very product driven, diversity of products. Still do a decent job of it, but they started this financial arm, and the financial arm outgrew the product side by orders of magnitude. And it's almost like, why do we even bother making toasters? Because what we make on a day of income on the financial side is so much.
Yeah.
We don't care. But it fundamentally changes why I give a shit about this. Like, look, if Apple tomorrow cures all the world's accounting problems in a way that makes everyone save trillions of dollars and all our lives better, and taxes go away, whatever, some amazing fiscal achievement, that's awesome. Kudos. You got credit for it. I don't give a fuck. That's not why I'm interested in this, So yeah, that's great success. By all means, go about doing it. But you have abandoned what is interesting and what is pushing the boundary. Computers.
Interesting to you.
This is not just me. Better accounting and financial software is important. It makes people's lives different. But tech pushes our human boundaries. It takes us to Star Trek.
Listen, I'm a huge fan of tech too. I'm a huge fan of Macs and iPhones and iPads too.
Fundamentally,
and I want Apple, and I want Tim, and I want the other executives to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. I want them to focus on these things that I want also, right? And not just the other things. This is one of those. You and I are so close on this.
I think, I don't think we're actually close. I think, again, we may be vehemently arguing past one another in agreement in that it's a question of how do you manage your focus. On the one hand, can you criticize GE for finding something that gives them orders of magnitude more cash with almost no effort, despite it not being technically?
They split it off though, right?
I think, I'm not sure.
Like 20 years ago.
Maybe you're right. But the point is, I don't blame anyone. It's the free money. What idiot doesn't want free money? But the question becomes, okay, do you split that off? Look, Apple has successfully managed to do something right with software. Only one thing. FileMaker. They spun it off as its own company. It runs and innovates at its own pace and does something. Unlike all the rest of Apple's shit software that they haven't updated from 2009. Fucking Pages is an embarrassment. Fucking Numbers is an embarrassment. They should all fucking kill themselves in a murder circle jerk and fucking just die of embarrassment. It's been 10 years. I still don't have a fucking table of contents. I can't get fucking line numbering or paragraph numbering after 10 motherfucking years. It's fucking outrageously embarrassing. If you're in software involved with that product, you should fucking want to kill yourself in shame or kill the people responsible.
Dude, that's over the line, man.
Okay.
The reality is that Apple probably has the people that would be doing all the iLife stuff, doing other things because they always run lean.
No, no. But the point is, if you've got important shit to do, but this is an important category that people depend on. People depended on motherfucking Final Cut before they just fucking blew it up and said, fuck y'all. If you have shit that people depend upon for their productivity, for their betterment of their lives, products, and you don't want to do it, that's fair.
But don't blame that. Don't blame that on the people. Blame that on the executive staff that is controlling what they do.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I don't mean like the programmers are bad. I'm sure they would love to go in and do a decent job if they were allowed to. You're right. They're probably pulled off because some dick fucking whatever. Tim Cook saw a squirrel and was distracted. But my point though is that they've had a model, which is get a team, spin it off in a way that it runs its own thing. They can make their own decisions. They don't have to go mother may I to the fucking squirrel watchers that are distracted by fucking color watch straps all day. They can go do their fucking thing and get product out. And FileMaker has been doing that. You could do that with iLife. You could do that with motherfucking iTunes. You can do that with Macs. You can do that with a lot of things and let them go run after a squirrel about healthcare, whatever it is. That's cool. That's a healthy thing. But one is not mutually exclusive of the other. And the fact that FileMaker has been running fine for all this time is evidence. It's doable. But incompetence from management has kept it from doing the right thing and making a structure. So if Apple finds that healthcare is their new $1 trillion thing, there's a way to structure things where you do that, but there's still cool stuff that can go on at Apple.
Yeah, I agree, and that's right. Where we're in agreement. Apple needs to be able to iterate on the existing products. It needs to be able to keep these other products moving.
Where Tim Cook has had a failure in his own wheelhouse, which is he's supposed to be an operations guy, a management guy, and he's supposed to be a guy that can figure this kind of structural shit out, and he hasn't. He hasn't in a managerial sense. And there are solutions for it. And I never get the feeling that they're looking to solve it. I think the management team is so much in their own bubble that they think that the way that management is going and the way that things get ignored is perfectly okay. And
that seems likely.
And that's a problem. And that's a lack of his vision. I don't blame Tim Cook for not having Steve Jobs' vision. Very few, if maybe none others do. I blame him. He's an operations dude. This is an operations and managerial issue. It should be something of concern. And I don't think it is. Anyway, we talk about tangents. Yeah, worst choice for me by far would be Angela. If Angela became CEO, Apple could solve all its energy problems by putting a fucking coil around Steve Jobs' corpse, putting a magnet next to it with a line to a fucking battery, because his spinning in his fucking grave that this fucking salesperson is going to be running this company would power all of Apple. Energy free from then on. Ridiculous. And it scares me that there might be truth to the rumor that...
I don't think there is.
Well, she got a big payday, and I don't think that was deserved. And God knows what else that they did to pull this major talent over. I pray it's only the money. If it's only the money, I'm cool with whatever. $75 million, not to break an important part of Apple, is probably money well spent in the grand scheme of things, I guess.
Watch and see if she starts doing product demos.
She did. She did on this one, and she was terrible, and everyone was blowing smoke up her ass. She's the only human being that fucking makes Tim Cook look dynamic. She's actually more plastic than he is. It's incredible.
I forgot about that. What did she introduce?
She introduced the stupid store or new plants, and we took the word Apple out of it.
No. An actual product. If she starts introducing products.
Oh, you mean? Well, she considered the stores to be a product.
This is true. But if she starts introducing conventional products.
By the way, for a person that had such an eloquent quip of marketing bullshit vetted by fucking lawyers, that statement that Apple stores are our own product itself, just like it's the most important. It's the same kind of banal shit that comes out of her mouth. But she's incredible. Anyway, I got to stop my bow on that. Yeah, she's the worst choice by far, in my opinion. So, and interestingly, I don't disagree with you that, you know, and again, also nothing against Johnny Ive. And I would love to be wrong. Maybe he would surprise us all, but yeah, he doesn't strike me as a great choice either. But it's interesting that you think that he's worse than Angela for Apple.
Did I say that? If I said that, I don't think I meant to.
He was the worst.
No, not the worst.
So who's the worst? Eddie Q?
That's interesting.
Phil Schiller?
Well, you know, Phil Schiller is probably the most Apple of them all. Isn't that interesting? He's the sales guy.
He's a marketing sales guy.
He's the sales guy, but he is the most. I think he eats, breathes, and sleeps Apple more than all of them.
I think Federici is by far. He's from the next days. How much more do you get than that?
Well, that's a fair point. Yeah, no, I don't think Phil would be good because he's a marketing guy. Although he is in charge of products now, at least he's in charge of the iTunes store, right? Or the App Store.
Something like
he's in charge of the App Store. He's in charge of the App Store now.
Some deck shuffle with Eddie Q there.
Yeah, I don't see an heir apparent. I don't really think Craig Federighi would be my top choice internally.
But who's your worst choice?
Angela, but not for the same vitriolic. Not for the same vitriolic bullshit.
This is great. You know why this is great? Because you and Jeff rag on me like, oh, fucking Keith said some stupid shit the other day. He's a fucking moron. And by the end of the conversation, you come around to my point of view, nonetheless. But you have to shit on me the entire time.
That's right. That's right.
And then it's all like, well, we just thought this had nothing to do with him. And
for the record,
over and over and over. For the record,
I don't know what you're talking about, but it's not for the same. It's not for the same vitriolic and bile-filled reasons that you constantly spew at her. I think she's doing some amazing stuff. I don't think she's a product person, and I think that without having a technology background, I think she'd have a difficult time inspiring the troops. I think she's enormously talented. She's doing some really interesting things, dude, but I don't think she should be CEO of a tech company.
You and I agree past each other all the time. Like I said before, even though I have my disdain for her, I don't think she's worth the money. I do give her credit. Like you've got a complex thing. It's potentially easy you could fuck it up. So just not fucking shit up is its own form of success. So I give her credit for that. Whether she's actually worth it, and this constant fawning of her, like she created a community shit. The community shit's been there from fucking day one, as far as I remember. And she planted trees and took off name tags and took the word store off the fucking thing. Those are her fucking contributions. If you're being intellectually honest.
No, you are being intellectually dishonest.
No. But I have
okay, fine. Listen, we've
given her credit that not fucking up is actually important.
We chewed on this a lot. We can close this out. We're already at an hour. Quickly, did you see the pictures of the Chicago store?
They were very pretty. Yeah,
it's a stunning store. Stunning little building.
Yeah, I agree. It was very pretty. The architect deserves a lot of credit, and everyone that was overseeing it, deserves a lot of credit for it. It was very, very pretty and well done thing. Hey, I got two tidbits here. Let me clean up my screen before I show this. So my desktop, this will look like poo probably, but let's go for it anyway. So first, Tim Cook and Angela Arden's are the same person. If you take Angela's hair and just transplant it from here to here, it will be the same person. It's kind of spooky.
Yeah, her ears are different. She's got longer lobes than Tim, and a little elfin shape going on. But yeah, profile like the nose
Dude,
and the chin. Yeah, they look they really do look a lot alike, man.
spooky. It's spooky.
In profile, at least.
I want for the 3 viewers that are watching us, and this is atypical of me because I'm not going to bag on Angela on this. She has this expression where she kind of pulls back her smile and her chin gets tight. We've all done this expression at some point. And I'm looking at it and I'm trying to realize I've done it a million times and I don't know what I'm trying to express when I do it. And when other people do it, I'm not sure what the emotion is. Like, are we expressing that, we don't know, or we're very content with ourselves and happy? I've asked a bunch of people and everyone knows this expression. We've kind of done this ourselves and have no clue what the hell.
Well, there's different versions of it. You can do a tight smile, and what it means is like tension. It means guilt. It means sympathy.
Sure.
That particular, you look at her eyes. She's happy in that picture.
Yeah.
And that's a different version of it entirely. I'm pointing. You can't really see me, but I'm pointing at her. I'm circling her face. That's a very, very happy.
But we've all
expression.
Done this kind of happy but pulled chin thing. Is it just mean we're happy? Is it?
You know what? I think what it means is that you are trying to control yourself and not
overt.
Express. Yeah,
like you're trying to restrain your glee.
Restrained glee. That could be it. But I don't know. We talked about this before the show, and I also do not know what that expression is called, and I'm also finding it very difficult to articulate what it is trying to express. What it means.
All right. Well, then it's just not me. Let's do 2 minutes on our last topic.
Okay.
Which it's I think a 2 minutes. It is every fucking year the new iPhone comes out. We see 3 or 4 reports saying the sky is falling. There's not going to be enough phones, or there's some production hiccup, or there's some sky is falling fucking event, and the iPhone is doomed. Then a week later, it's like, well, it's kind of not as doomed as we thought. And then by the end of the quarter, everything worked out great. So this year, it started out with early reports that there's only 300,000 iPhone X's that were coming out. That's all they were able to produce. Now it's maybe we'll get 20 million this year, which is only half of what some asshole says it should be. And my prediction is this is fucking noise. Once again, because of, I'm not going to go down the rabbit hole of why I think why, because you and I disagree on it. Needless to say, you think all the markets run perfectly and are never distorted. But it seems to be like for the last 4 or 5 years, just it's kind of Charlie Brown with the ball, where they set this up, this narrative that it's all going to be a tragedy and it all works out. Yes, there's shortages at times, but they're reasonable, and the quarter always seems to work out pretty well for Apple by the end of it. I don't see any reason otherwise. It seems like bullshit speculation, just click horror articles and nothing more. What are your thoughts on it?
I imagine that there's some fire to this particular smoke.
Interesting. Okay.
We're just seeing, so the product cycle, the rumor cycle on products works like this. You've got little drips and drabs coming out of the supply chain, and people are usually getting what those drips and drabs mean wrong. They're getting it wrong with what it means. But then the closer you get to the release date, the more consistent the rumors come. You get this body of evidence, and it's sort of like it goes like, if I can do this here, it goes like this, and then you get closer to that release, and then boom, you're here with the rumors, and there's just this wall of rumors coming out of Apple's supply chain, and there's basically this critical mass point that rumors reach, and at that point you can pretty much count on it actually being the case. And I think that we have that critical mass with production constraints.
So, well, yeah, but all right, maybe we're talking past each other. There's one thing to say that there's going to be production constraints. This is not the first time Apple's had a product that was production constrained and took a while for production to catch up. But the quarter ended up great anyway, right? It's not like, oh, the sky's falling. Apple expected to make 40 billion this quarter, and now they're making 10 or 20, right? I think the end of the quarter, they're going to have, and the end of the year, they're going to have a fantastic quarter and year regardless. And yes, it'll be a product that that is constrained for quite a while, but so what? Like, that's nothing new.
Well, it will really depend on the iPhone 10. It's going to depend on whether or not people are also buying or buying instead the iPhone 8 and 8 Plus. And you've talked extensively, you've written extensively and talked extensively about how unchanging Apple's form factors have been for the main iPhone product line up until the 10, really. And the consistent rumor is that people aren't buying the 8. So if everyone is waiting for the 10 because they don't care about the 8, and Apple can only sell 20 million 10s this quarter, that could actually bode a terrible quarter for Apple.
It could. My prediction. So let's make our prediction. This is my prediction. Okay. My prediction is it's quarter and year will end up just fine. Production obviously was going to be constrained, but it's a new product. So that is what it is. But the revenue is going to be within some, in my opinion, meaningless percentage difference, 2 or 3% this way, 2 or 3% that way. Who gives a shit? It's going to be fine, and they're going to have a great. Their quarter is going to be totally fine, and their year.
The first quarter will be great, but the second fiscal quarter, first calendar quarter.
So you think that So you think that we're on the same page that the first quarter is fine. You think the second quarter may be bad, and
no, I think the second quarter could be great.
Oh, okay.
Because iPhone 10 would be coming. iPhone 10 would be coming out of problems.
So when will it be bad then? My point is that their revenues.
It could be okay. It could be bad this quarter. You are probably correct that the quarter will be fine, but it probably won't be a record bang out quarter unless Apple can actually get these production problems solved.
Is that a reasonable expectation? Like, oh, they always need to have, a quarter that's completely better than the I think that's crazy.
Well, but Apple itself established that expectation.
It's one thing
by doing it.
Headline to say that, oh, maybe they won't have quite as great a quarter as they would have liked, versus the fucking sky's falling. This is it. This is the time when we're all fucking doomed. They don't have enough products at the end of times.
If Apple sold? Let's see here. What did Apple see? iPhone sales 2016 Christmas.
Quarter wasn't it like 45-ish million? I could be wrong.
It's right. Should be 15 million.
Oh, was it 15? I'm sorry, I thought it was 45. Maybe that's for the year.
The iPhone sales Christmas, Apple sales. Well, let's get this right. This is probably worth taking the time to. Sausage being made right here. Plus, I can't type. Quarter. Oh, 74.
74. So 45 is
right?
kind of like
no. It's not 74, man. I'm getting this wrong, but I think it was over 50, which is
I thought it was around 45. Q4 2016.
74 million. Was it really 74 million? So if Apple, one way or another, be it 50 million or 74 million.
It's 45.5 million iPhones were sold in Q4 of 2016.
Okay, so if Apple were to sell 30 million iPhones, that would be a problem for Wall Street.
Not really, if their margin is that much higher. So the real number, in my opinion, is what was their revenue? Their revenue was 46.9. So even if they sell instead of 40,
sales didn't matter. Thought sales didn't matter.
What sales didn't matter?
You were saying sales don't matter. Revenues don't matter.
But with regard to these articles, that they are about sales. They're like, the sky's falling. This is the beginning of the end of Apple, right? So if Apple makes only 40 million,
it's not the beginning of the end of Apple. That's ridiculous. If Apple ends up having a terrible quarter because everybody wants the iPhone 10, a lot worse things have happened to a lot of companies. It's going to mean that quarter 2 and quarter 3 are going to be tremendous.
Agreed. So I don't think that the sales numbers, if they're 46.9 million in revenue and 45-ish million in volume, they're not going to be significantly off that. They're going to be right in there. which means everything is fine, and this is just another hit horror article. It's my point. Anyway, okay, so you actually don't think it's going to be a bad year for them. They may have a hiccup in a quarter, but nothing end of the world.
No, I would imagine that, I mean, really, the worse the fourth quarter is, the Christmas quarter, it's actually the first fiscal quarter. The worse that quarter is, the better quarter 2 and quarter 3 are going to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. All right, good enough.
So yeah, for the year it'll be fine.
Cool beans. Well, I think we've beaten a few dead horses today.
Yep.
All right.
No more neighing over here.
Well, we'll save that for next week.
Hey, listen, if you like this, I don't know why you would like the show, but if you do like the show, make sure you hit subscribe. We would love for you to subscribe to us. We very much appreciate it.
Yes, thank you very much for your watching and putting up with us, and thank you very much, Brian, for putting up with me. And
likewise.
On those popular topics, we'll see you next
week.